Hi guys, it's your girl from Philly. Welcome to another episode of Handcrafted Wines, where we make great wine from home the fun and easy way. Before we get started, please remember to like, share, subscribe, and click that notification bell so you don't miss any episodes. In today's episode, we're going to be making probably the easiest wine there is to make outside of just basic grape juice wine, and that's going to be tea wine. So our ingredients is 6 tea bags steeped in boiling water, 4 cups, yes, 4 cups of white sugar, the juice of an entire lemon but not the peel, our dynamic duo, which is our yeast nutrient and our yeast energizer. And for our yeast, we're going to be using Red Star Premier Classique as our yeast. Now let's get started. The very first thing I want to do is I want to spoon off the tea bags from our tea. It's been steeping now for about 10 minutes, so it's done its job. And I'm using just plain old black tea. You can use any type of tea that you'd prefer. I mean, if you're a fan of, like an Earl Grey or something like that, feel free to use it. Okay, that's done. Now I'm going to add the tea to our fermentation jar. Oh, there's one more tea bag left in there. Look at that. And we just want to make sure that we have a lot of tea for plenty of tea flavor in our wine. Now, if you notice, our recipe doesn't call for a lot of our usual players, just our yeast nutrient and our yeast energizer. The reason is there's loads and loads of tannin in this tea, so we don't need to supply tannin. There's loads of acid in the lemon juice that we're going to add, so we don't need to supply acid blend. The only thing we need are this ingredient, our yeast, and of course our sugar. So I'm going to add our lemon juice, and I think I'm going to do it outside the fermenter because I want to be able to fish out any seeds. I don't want them to go inside the fermenter. And the reason I didn't use pectic enzyme this time is because there's nothing to break down. There's absolutely no solids in our substrate. Now the substitution for acid blend is about 1/2 of a lemon to 1/4 of a lemon. We're adding the juice of a whole lemon for the flavor. Okay, so that's 1/2. And I do have some seeds in here, so I'll have to fish those out. Yep, they're squirting on me. Now, if you're not a fan of caffeine, tea wine is very, very highly caffeinated. So if you have trouble sleeping or you just like to keep caffeine out your diet, try using a decaffeinated tea or an herbal tea instead. This won't be a tea that I would be drinking on a daily basis just because it is so high in caffeine. But on a cool day, it'll be really nice over some ice. All right, I'm going to turn this around and squeeze it one more time. But we've gotten plenty of juice. Squirting. Okay, so I'm done with that. I'm going to fish out the seeds because there's really no reason for them to be there. They don't add anything. Not that they would hurt anything, but who wants seeds? Okay. And it was just 3 of them in there, so that was a quick removal. I'm going to add our lemon juice. We'll brighten up the color very slightly, but this is a lot of tea. It's 6 servings of tea. So it's still going to maintain a lot of deep color to it. Now we're going to add our 4 cups of sugar. The reason why I'm adding so much sugar is we don't have any type of substrate with sugar in it that would add any more sugars to the batch. So there's no fruit in here. Lemon has a trace amount of sugars in it, but not much. I'm spilling sugar, but that's okay. And I'm going to use the whole thing. There's no reason to take a reading first to see whether or not it's necessary. We know it's necessary. And I'm going to brush some of the sugar off so I can work. Now I'm going to dissolve the sugar inside the tea. Really, if you are new to winemaking and you just want to try your hand at fermentation, you can use the things that are in your cupboard. Instead of using wine yeast, you can use bread yeast for this. Regular sugar, regular tea, and just the juice of a lemon. Lemon actually is brightening it up some, but it's not going to be that bright. And if you don't have a fermenter, a mason jar would do fine. You would just, instead of adding an airlock to the top of it, you would screw the top down, but just leave a little room for air to be able to get through. And you would still be able to make your wine. Now, because this is so hot, I'm going to add my water before I add the yeast nutrient and yeast energizer. It's really, really hot. I don't know if it would affect it. I don't want to take any chances. And we could go all the way to the top. There's nothing in here to cause any bubbling over. Yeah, we still have a lot of good color. And I'm going to continue to stir because I still see some more sugar crystals at the bottom. Not a lot. Now what we have right now is basic tea. Let this cool and you have iced tea. It's nothing fancy about it, but you could use an herbal tea. If you like sleepy time tea, you can use something like that. If you like something very bright and colorful, use whatever you prefer. A hibiscus tea would be fantastic. Okay, now we're going to add our only supplements we have to add. And make sure that they're dissolved very well. The yeast energizer is clumping up a little bit. So I'm going to catch it, press it against the jar, and dissolve it. And if you're a fan of making sun tea in the summertime, you can make an extra batch of sun tea and, put one batch aside and turn it into wine. The funny thing about tea wine is there's no fruit in it, but it does pick up some fruit notes. It has a fruity finish. But we'll talk about it once we've gone through the fermentation process and we get to a tasting. That's the fun part. All right, I'm going to keep stirring. I still see some, but they are dissolving. They don't do us any good if they're in a clump. Eventually they'll just fall to the bottom, but they won't add any benefit to the wine. Looks like we're good. So we're going to take our gravity reading just to see what our potential alcohol is. But the yeast that we're using goes up to about 15%. So if we go over that with our gravity reading, that just means that we'll have some residual sweetness in our batch. A little star sand. We're going to draw our 250 milliliters. Now, this type of wine absolutely can be drank with casual foods. Like you can have tea wine with a burger or a chicken sandwich or something like that. It's not fancy. It's just a really good light table wine. Wouldn't be considered a red wine. Not really a white wine either. So maybe it's a gold tone rosé. I don't know. Okay. And we're going to spritz our hydrometer with a little star sand. Make sure that's okay. We can get this reading. So I'm very satisfied. I don't know if you can see the line because there's some bubbles in the cylinder, but I'm very satisfied with where it ended. Our reading was at the bottom line, so our reading is 1.090. Let me see what on my hydrometer what it says that would be potential alcohol. So this is kind of weird. It's right in the middle. It shows where 10% is and 15% is, and this is right in the middle. So I'm going to say 13, but of course we're going to go to brewersfriend.com and we're going to take our numbers and see exactly where that would put us. Just want to confirm the numbers. 1.090, yeah. .13%. So that's a nice level. It's not too strong. Now, if we had just went with the 2.5 cups of sugar or the 3 cups of sugar that we normally go with when we're adding fruit or any other ingredient to our batch, we would have fallen way below where we would actually want to be. And since our yeast can handle all of that, we're probably going to ferment to dry, but we'll find out. And then I can always back sweeten it. And I can back sweeten it with more sugar. I can back sweeten it with honey. I have extra maple syrup because I made a maple syrup wine. I can always use maple syrup or any type of sweetener that we want to use. Anything that we want to maybe add a little bit flavor to our batch. This is a nice temperature. It's just slightly warmer than room temperature, but not hot enough to deter the yeast from fermenting. And I'm not going to stir just because it's nothing to get in its way. It's going to hydrate on its own and do its own thing. Now there's a little bit of foaming on the parameter of the fermenter, but that's just because tea has a tendency to foam. That has nothing to do with the yeast. So that's not an indicator of how well it's hydrating, but it is hydrating. Like, okay, so I'm already seeing them fall down, which means they'll get saturated with the liquid. They'll start taking in some water and some sugar, and they'll start fermenting quickly. This is one of the most easiest wines to make. I don't know if this took us longer than 10 minutes or not, but this is absolutely an easy wine to make. And a wine like this, you can swirl the bottle every day for the first 7 days. If you want to incorporate a little bit more air, you can, but honestly, it's kind of foolproof. You don't have to do a lot to make it work. And then you would have drinkable wine, I would say, in 4 to 6 weeks. It would be just a rough wine. If you want to make sure that it has a smoother taste to it, of course, give it 3 months, give it 6 months. It would taste a lot better. I've never, oh wow, yeah, it's hydrating really fast. I wish the camera could pick it up, but it looks like a snow globe right now. They're just like cascading down into the batch. I've never had a tea wine that stayed around longer than 6 months. This is just one of the wines that we drink when they're very, very early, and we enjoy it that way. I make it a little sweet so that I can pour it over ice, and I just really, really like it just for a summer sip or anytime. This is good for any time at all, and it's really great for like sitting in front of the TV and having like a casual dinner. Tea wine just kind of goes right along with that. And you can, dress it up a little bit. You can add sodas to it. You can just do whatever you want to give it whatever flavor you want at that time. It's a really good base wine to be able to just do whatever suits your fancy. So, of course, we're going to add our lid with our drilled hole and grommet. Oh, it's hydrating really, really well. I had no worries about this wine whatsoever. Tea is one of the easiest to make. I've actually made tea wine with a lot of tea. Those big bags that you would use to make iced tea with, I used a lot of those in a 5-gallon batch. And even with the lemon juice added, it was very, very dark, but it was extremely high in caffeine. So if that's something that you want to look out for, be careful to just use, in this batch, I used 6 bags. That's quite enough. If you even wanted to bring it down to 4 bags, you would still get plenty of tea flavor and plenty of color. It's up to you. All right, and our airlock. I'm going to fill our airlock up to the max fill line. This wine really is a fix and forget kind of wine. You don't really have to worry about it. It's going to do its thing. When it's done, it's going to let you know. All right, we're at a max fill line. Okay, this is funny. All of the yeast fell to the bottom. Now they're all coming back up to the top. Some are, well, they're kind of moving around, but that's really what happens when the little tiny yeast cakes begin to hydrate. You'll start to see them dissipate altogether. You won't see them. This will become a little bit more opaque because I don't even know what the matter is that they cake the yeast into, but whatever that is, it's going to make this a lot more opaque. We, of course, won't be able to see the yeast, but I can see that this is going to be really, really successful. I didn't have to spray the tip of it because this is not a new airlock, and it went in with no problem. But if you ever have any resistance putting your airlock in, just spray it with a little Star Sand and make sure that you're keeping it sanitized, but it has some lubrication to it too. Oh, this is really nice and really, really easy. Winemaking is not hard. You can get creative with recipes if you'd like to, but if you basically just want to have some inexpensive wines to be able to have at home when company shows up or just for your own pleasure, it's just a smart thing just to have maybe 3 or 4 1-gallon batches sitting around. If you plan on having a big event like a cookout or a family dinner or holiday time, make yourself a 5-gallon batch, and then you'll have a little bit to share. You can always share wine, and it's nothing like something that's homemade that's really good to give to your friends and family. All right, so so now the foaming that we see now is the yeast getting busy. It's not just the foam that occurs from the tea naturally. Yeah, they like where they are. This is their new home and they like it here. So that's it for Handcrafted Wines. Please remember again to like, share, subscribe, click the notification bell, leave comments if you'd like. I've actually gotten some messages on Facebook of people who just didn't want to comment on the channel. I don't know why, but you can comment on the channel, but you can always reach me on my Facebook or my Instagram as well, and just let me know how things are going with your wine. So have a fantastic night, and thank you again for spending this time with me. Bye-bye.